Welcome to 2Cents FC. I'm your host, Amobi Okugo, back again with my guy, L. Each week, we'll be talking with individuals from around the soccer world, learning about their stories and getting their unfiltered thoughts and opinions. This week, we're joined by sports marketer and NC Courage co-owner, Sara Toussaint. We'll be talking about Sara's work in the sports world, her investment in the NC Courage, and her nonprofit work and more. First and foremost, for anyone that's watching on YouTube, I am outside. The show must go on. It's been a crazy week, games, meetings, but that's how we got to do it. But Sara, thank you so much for taking the time. How you doing today? It's been a long time.
Thank you. I know. I have to say I'm flattered. I've been watching your work, and I was like, what? I got an invitation to be on the show? Yes. No, I'm good. I'm in a good mood, especially because I'm talking to you guys.
No, what's great about it is that what's great about it is that L connected with you like without even me saying anything. So that just shows like your.
Yeah, I didn't even know you guys knew each other. So.
Yeah, your impact in the space. So when he told me like we had you on, I was like, "How did you even know her?" And he's like, "Hey, I just been searching. I just following." So we used to start off with like, "How'd you fall in love with soccer?" But we're going to start off with two truths and a cap. So I think I'm going to win this one, but we'll see.
All right. So for those who aren't familiar, Two Truths and a Cap is a game where Sara would tell us 3 facts about herself. 2 would be true, 1 would be a lie, and Amobi and I have to guess what the lie is. So I got a pretty good track record with this game. Amobi's playing catch up, but let's see what happens. Go ahead.
Trying to make a summer run.
Let's see. So before going back to your comment about Elle finding me first, I actually thought it was you, Amobi, when he reached out to me. And I was like, hey, Amobi, this is you. I'm like, yeah, I'm in. So I just assumed it was you and not Elle. Okay.
Oh, perfect.
I'm the one doing the dirty work most of the time.
Yeah, he's doing the dirty work. He's the midfielder. I'm the forward that comes in and like finishes the goals at the end of the 90 minutes.
It's all about teamwork. All right. So I had to write stuff down because I'm a terrible liar. And I kind of want to cover my face as I'm saying these things. But all right, you ready? So 2 truths and 1 not truth. All right, here we go. All right. All right, first one. Michelle Obama gave me my first internship. I was a keeper. I played keeper when I was younger. And I've been with my husband for 24 years.
That's tough.
From Chicago, so I could see the Michelle Obama thing.
Yeah, that's a good shout right there. That's tough. 24 years is such a distinct number, though.
Yeah, it is distinct. Too distinct to be a lie, almost.
Yeah, right. Goalie. I haven't seen her tweet about like goalies in the past, so it's like usually goalkeepers union is like.
Yeah, I might roll with that one.
I don't know.
I'm going to roll with that one. I'm going to roll with the goalie.
Yeah. I'm going Michelle because I think it might have been like Barack, so like I'm going Michelle. Michelle's the cap. No disrespect to Michelle or anything, but I think that's the cap.
I would love to play Trivial Pursuit with you guys because you're good. And I like your thought process. All right, so you ready for the unveiling?
Yep.
Right.
The reveal. So Michelle Obama gave me my first internship. So already, yeah. Let's see. I've been with my husband for 24 years. We've been married for 15, but we've been together for a long time, since 1997. And then I did not play keeper. I played softball growing up. So.
Hey.
Wow.
That's it.
Good. So we both got to wait.
You said you've been with your husband or you've been married to your husband? Which one was
I said I've just been. So technically I've been with my husband. So I didn't say married.
Okay. So I got it right.
Oh, okay. So you taking that point then?
Yeah, I'm taking it.
Oh, fair enough.
For sure.
Where were you, Amobi? I felt like L after I think L won that one. Sorry.
Yeah, no, we got to give it to him. Now I'm down bad. Like he's up. Well, to be fair,
we haven't even really been keeping score like that. I didn't know I'm up.
Keeping score.
Well, based on the few episodes I've heard, or the handful of episodes I've heard, I think L has been leading. Yeah.
Yeah, fact.
Sorry, man.
So, it's all good. But so Sarah, when did you fall in love with soccer? I know you've been working in the space for quite some time, but when did you fall in love with soccer?
Yeah, it was
Oh my gosh.
2000. I'm gonna get that flag for you. I'm gonna fly down and get that flag for you. It was 2006. I didn't grow up, even though I grew up in a Mexican neighborhood where soccer was everywhere. My mom wouldn't let us go to the park to play. So I didn't get the opportunity to play soccer. So we played street ball behind, in the alley behind our apartment where she'd keep an eye on us. And so I grew up playing softball instead. Anyhow, 2006 World Cup. It was my first couple months working at Major League Soccer. I had no idea what offside was. I didn't know what I was looking at. But just like the excitement of that, the excitement of obviously The Office and the fact that you could watch them, watch the matches while you were, working and kind of seeing the MLS players who were there, right, and having that connection to the league was huge. And I think that was also the year. I don't know if you guys spent any time in New York City, but that was the year I think Italy won. And so we were in Little Italy and we went to some restaurant, like everybody in Little Italy was watching the game. And so to be part of that finals game, even though we weren't in Germany, that's right. It was Germany. I was trying to, not South Africa, but just seeing when Italy won and seeing how just bonkers the whole city went, and especially Little Italy, and being there. And it was just, it wasn't just the Italians who were there. Everybody who lived in New York City was, in the neighborhood watching. And so that was a moment that really got to me. And so I feel like a poser sometimes because I never played. Like I said, I didn't know what offside was, but I know now. That was it. And I was like, oh, I love the international aspect of this. And just seeing everybody come together. I know that people are like, oh, soccer unites, and they do unite, but we do know sometimes it gets heated. Because that was also the match. Was that the match where Zidane headbutted? Was it that final?
In the final, yeah. That's he did that.
So that was a little violent. He chose violence.
What a way to go out. If they would have won that would have been like one of the best ways to go out in like an international game, by the way. Sorry. So that was a good introduction for you. 2006 World Cup in Germany. A lot of historic teams that played and did well. That was the time when Joga Bonito was like kind of popular, I think, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
So with that being said, you transitioned into soccer through MLS, but before that, I know we've talked offline about, business school, different things like that. So can you give us like some of your origin around that?
Oh gosh. You know what? It's actually through business school I got the job at MLS because I'm like, how long you want this podcast to be? I'll try and keep it tight.
You're fine. I don't think you're going to break the record. You're good.
I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I was working at Major League Baseball and hated it. Really open about saying I hated working there. It was my first day on the job. I was like, oh shoot, this was a mistake. But my husband, was he my husband? He had just proposed, but he had just started medical school. So somebody had to pay the rent, right? Somebody had to pay the bills while he was in school. So I couldn't quit this job. And so I was at MLB, hated it, felt like I wasn't really being used to my potential, and said, God, I got to do something to keep me motivated or at least interested so my brain doesn't feel like it's just numb, right? And so I applied to business school. So I went part-time, went to NYU. And while I was at NYU, I met a classmate who was in the finance department of MLS. And we're taking we had got to know each other, and we had been taking the 4 train down to, Greenwich Village. And he's like, you know what? There's a job opening up at MLS. Would you be interested? It's focused on sponsorships around the Mexican national team and the Hispanic market. And I was like, yeah, but I don't have the experience. He's like, just give it a shot anyway. And so I have to credit my business school degree. It was a hell of an expensive degree, but that was, I would say NYU has actually led to these 2 career opportunities. One was with Major League Soccer, and the second one was with Wells Fargo. So I have to say, just kind of showing up that way, really kind of led me to some really great career opportunities. But I love business school. It was tough, right? Going part-time while you're working full-time, and the classes were really intense and you're around like really smart people. But it got me going when my day was just dreary and long and boring. I was like hyped to be like, I'm going to class, with my fresh new notebook and everything. So I don't know if that's what you want me to say, but
that's good. I think it's a great topic because a lot of people that are trying to like take that next inroad into the sports business space or whatever space it is. It's like, do I go to grad school? Do I not? It's a big commitment. It's a big sacrifice.
Oh, yeah.
And then now you see like sports management programs, like NYU has a program, Columbia has a program, all these different programs. So I just wanted to get your insight for someone that's done it. What does that look like for anyone that may be listening?
Yeah, no, I said, for me, it was definitely worth it. I think it just depends on where you're going to be, what school you get into, and do they have a good track record? Because at the end of the day, to me, these sports programs, they're moneymakers for the institutions, right? And so they've got to fulfill that mission to help students find careers in the spaces. And so I do worry about some kids, especially like the ones like going straight from undergrad to a sports management class. Like I do worry that, it's a competitive field and maybe they want to get some experience and really think through it. Cause it's start up from I fell into sports. It's not a path I chose. It's not, it doesn't pay well, right? It just doesn't pay well. And so if you're looking to pay off student debt, like that's a long road. So I would just really I would tell folks to like really think about it before they apply.
Let me see, how can I frame this? Would you say it's worth it to go get a sports graduate degree, or are there other ways you can kind of grind your way in to the industry and kind of get in with, saving some coin?
Yeah, I would say if you're already in the industry, I don't know what an advanced degree is going to do for you. If you're looking at transition, so you've graduated from school, you're maybe in a career that's not as appealing, you want to make a switch, I'd say, yeah, it's probably worth it. So you understand, kind of what you're getting into. And at the end of the day, whether it's, whatever grad school you're going to, if it's, I think, a business focused one, that you are really getting there for the network, right? And know that. I mean, I want to say I'm like a nerd, but I'm not like the best of students. Like I'm just going to go hard as hard as I need to go, right?
Yeah.
But I do enjoy learning, but I'm not going to go like all the way. I'm like, what am I going to do to like not look dumb? If I get the A, great. If I get the B, cool. Like C, maybe I'll speak by. So anyway, I guess the long answer is, I think if you're looking for a transition, and I was looking for a transition, that's why I did go to business school too, because I had started off in the legal field, and so I wanted to switch. So I think if you're looking for transitions, I definitely think it's worth it. If you are already in the industry, even on the periphery, I'd be like, there may be some other ways to do it that's cheaper.
Yeah, that's something I'm kind of like battling with. I don't want to say battling with, but like I've thought about it. So like my undergrad is in business, but I work in the design field. So I work for those who know me personally, I work like as a UX designer. So I've always been in the design and creative field.
Nice.
But moving into the sports media space, like we're doing with 2Cents Sports, I've always kind of juggled with the idea of like, should I get an advanced degree, or should I just continue to grind it out and then create content, use my creative, resources and network, and then, kind of get in that way. So still trying to
figure that part out.
Yeah.
I mean, I could spend the next hour talking to you about just career advice and all that. I'd be like, like you're already doing it, right? So I would say if you enjoy learning and you're excited about learning, then think about the next step in terms of education. But I think what you're already doing is really good, and how much of going to another program would help. So, the cost benefit analysis, you got to think through.
Yeah, I'm not excited about spending that money. No.
Yeah, I feel like you're getting the MBA just by like doing what we're doing now. So
with all the people you're talking to, yeah. But seriously, if you want to chat more and anything I can do to like help assist, whether it's intros or
for sure.
talk about school.
I got a kid going to college next year. I'm not about to go back to school. If I don't have to. Yeah.
Wow. It's never too late, and it's also something really cool about that. I had yeah, I know. I was like, oh, here's this young guy, right, a couple years out of college. Let me help him. But no, you're good.
You can still help me, though.
He said, we're not turning down help.
No, not turning down no help.
So Sarah, with that being said, you mentioned MLS, you mentioned Wells Fargo, you've done some great things in the sports marketing space. Has there been like any project that like when you talk to people or network, like that's one that comes to mind? That one sponsorship that you were able to, secure, or one collaboration or campaign that really was like, yeah, this is why I love my job. This is what I'm all about. Yeah.
No, the reason, so I never thought I would like working for a bank, quite frankly. But my team is really great, and the work we do is really good. And it's actually a pretty diverse team. Like, it was like maybe 10 of us in the sports marketing team. And like the head of our department was, a gay male. The guy that pulled me in, so I went to NYU happy hour, and that's how I got this job at Wells Fargo. A black gentleman from New Jersey, super cool. We had a black woman. It was like just like a really really unexpected and wonderful family. So I've been here for a while. But what keeps me here for 8 years, because after 2 years, I'm usually like bored and ready to go somewhere else, is the work around the Mexican national team. I know there's a lot of U.S. soccer fans, that listen to this podcast, but we can talk about some unfiltered thoughts there. But I, growing up in a Mexican neighborhood, I knew that community to be like really proud of who they were, loud, hardworking, playing mariachi, on the weekends. We had guys living in an apartment next door that were part of the mariachi band. So they were like, literally like, proud of who they were. And I left the neighborhood and then really understood like what it was to be undocumented, or as understood as I possibly could be, right? About the fear of being caught and being deported. And so while I was at, technically Soccer United Marketing, and while I'm at Wells Fargo sponsoring or doing work around the Mexican national team, gives me like the greatest joy, because this is a community where its members will work their asses off, bust their, farm workers, laborers, all the, really labor intensive jobs that are underpaid, right? That folks don't really want. They will work their asses off, save that money, send it back home, but they will keep, $150 as, for themselves to buy a ticket to the game in a Mexico jersey, right? And so as sponsors, mind you, it's corporate, and I work for a bank, and, all these things that people like really dislike. Without the sponsors, like these teams don't show up, right? And so these fans don't have a moment to be who they are until they'll come to the game, and they're there as soon as, even before gates open, ready to, display their flags and play their music and eat their carne asada and all these good things, right? And so I think just generally that's the work that keeps me going. In terms of like one project, 2018 World Cup, did a campaign around new mobile services that we had, including a fraudulent alert. And, we did this TV ad campaign with Landon Donovan, getting a suspicious, text alert on his phone about a purchase at the Mexico national team store. And his friend's like, yo, Landon, like, that's weird. And he's like, is it? And then Landon he opens his jacket to show that he's wearing a Mexico shirt. And
I think I remember that.
Yes. So that campaign was kind of wild for a lot of reasons, but the big one was like Landon, as much as people were really upset with Landon doing that, right? They were upset that he was cheering on Mexico. They felt he sold out. But the thing about Landon, at least from what I know of him, working with him, I think since 2014, is like he grew up in Southern California. He grew up playing with immigrants. He grew up, at least learning Spanish. He was playing for Liga MX at the time. And, he was really like, he was really a man of conviction in terms of, doing this in support of our campaign, which was in response to, quite frankly, Trump being president in 2017 into 2018, and just seeing how traumatized, Black community was, Latino community was, but, I specifically was working with, Mexican fan base, and to be able to work on a campaign that showed, our big, one of our biggest, customer base, like we see you, we support you, we know you love this team, it's part of your identity, and like we're here for you. And mind you, this is all, it's a corporation, right? At the end of the day, but there are people behind the work, and this was something like I was really, really proud of, and it caused a lot of commotion. For a second, like this is maybe like not the best of a joke, but I felt like, oh my God, like I just started the civil war across like U.S. Men's national team, because people were upset. Other players were upset with Donovan. He like fought back and was like, "What are you talking about?" And so anyhow, so the work I do with the Mexican national team gives me purpose. And when I was interviewing for Wells Fargo, I said, look, if you were hiring me to work on the NFL or the MLB, I would not be interested in this job. But it's specifically because you're working with the Mexican national team and soccer that I want to be here. So there was that was kind of a long story, but it's so much longer than what I'm telling you. That's the one I feel really good about. And I will say, like, after that commotion, fans were like, that's my bank. Wells Fargo's my bank. I love my bank. And who says that about their bank? No one, right? Oh. And at that week, Wells Fargo was the number one brand discussed during the opening week of the World Cup after Nike and Adidas. And again, we're not sponsors. We're a bank that people aren't excited about. But in that moment, it was mostly good conversation.
Killing it.
So, you talk about like all the details that went into like making that deal with Landon Donovan and like being on the corporate sponsorship side. Like, what makes a good deal? Like the deal flow behind like a sponsorship. What are you guys looking for? Is it to create conversation, sometimes controversy, sometimes engagement? What does that look like?
Oh, it depends on the year, right? So I've been here 8 years, and it's changed from everything from, we want to connect more with the millennial and Hispanic markets, and we want them to use mobile banking more, to, we've had some reputational issues. Now we got to work on like how to rebuild trust. But I would say, I get pitched, I don't know how many times a day, and there's some like really great and interesting programs out there, but not everybody's like the best like delivery of that program. Like not everybody's like a great salesperson. And I throw myself into that bucket, but I would say kind of just know who you're talking to. I know like it's really hard to like, you need income, you need revenue, but I get pitched for stuff that doesn't make sense. Like shooting competition, like horse racing, like gambling, betting events. Like we can't, as a bank, there's certain things that we just don't want to touch. And there's other brands that aren't going to want to be associated with some of these things as well. So I just say, what are we looking for? That's changing at the moment, but I'd say, for me, it's like, what are the teams, because we mostly focus on sports, although that might change down the road. What are the things that have a really engaged audience? I'd say engagement right now, right? Because everybody knows who Wells Fargo is. So me, putting Wells Fargo on a sign isn't going to do much for the brand. People already know Wells Fargo. So what's going to get people to be, hey, Wells Fargo is my bank, right? Like, what are those? And this sounds like really vague, but really, what is it? It can't be presented by Wells Fargo. Again, like there's a lot of, there's just like a lot of, I don't know what the opposite of creativity is, but there's a lot of like tired approaches in sponsorship, where we just kind of see the same thing. Like, oh, well, we'll get your brand in front of everybody. I'm like, well, we got branches everywhere. People see the sign. So like, what else? And so I think being able to like really find ways to connect with folks, is best. And it's hard, man. It's hard because everybody's on social. Everybody's an influencer. Everybody like, it's like, once you kind of think like, oh, this is going to work, it's already been done like for a year. And so you got to try and find something new. But I'd say anything that really like captivates like emotion or energy, even like stuff like, community goodwill, like that feels like that's also been kind of done so much that nobody trusts the corporation to do it. Right. So what else? And I don't have all the answers. Just sometimes I'll see something really cool and interesting. I'm like, wow, I've not seen that before. And that kind of piques my interest. Now, whether we have the budget, that's a separate conversation. Right.
Yeah. So I got a question off that, because obviously being a bank, there's like a lot of compliance. So you guys have to be even more creative. But from the standpoint of like, you mentioned people pitching you, what are like some immediate, like don't pitch me with this, or like, don't say this in the email? Because I know a lot of times, with 2Cents Sports, and we reach out to quite a few people, but people are interested in like, all right, how can I get this company to back this? Or how can I get this collaboration to work?
I would say, so I usually get pitches via email. And I think if you're going to reach out to me, like you guys did your homework, right? So it was like, oh, she's from Chicago. Amobi, you're like, she doesn't talk about goalkeepers, right? So it's a lot of work, but know who you're reaching out to, even if it's like a 5-minute Google search, right? And I can tell right away when somebody has not done their homework. And it could be everything from somebody trying to explain why soccer is important. Like, come on, man. Like, I've worked for MLS. I've been sponsoring soccer for years. Like, I think I know what I'm getting into, right? So like, that's really irritating. Let's see what else. We can get your brand out there. That's really irritating because our brand is out there, right? So I just anytime I see that somebody has not done their homework is like, no, right? And here's the thing though, I will always get back to somebody if they've done their homework, I will always respond. Even if it's a no, an immediate no, I will always respond. And an immediate no could be like e-gaming, like for shoot 'em up games, right? Or battle games. Like that's, anything with violence, MMA, wrestling, immediate no, right? But if it's a good pitch, then I'll be like, this is why we can't do it. And I'll give them a rationale. If it's a cut and paste job, then I'll usually hit delete. Because you can see them. Like it is like really obvious when somebody has not done any work. And again, it's a lot, right? Because it's at the end of the day, it is a numbers game. You're pitching like 100 people to get maybe 10 responses to get maybe one yes. And you do not have all the time to do all your homework on everybody. But I would say even 2 minutes, you can tell. I've taken phone calls for people knowing I'm going to say no, but letting them know like, hey, I was really impressed with your pitch. I can't do it, but keep on going and good luck. There's some people I've offered to help. Doesn't always work out, but because I think they're so good, I'm like, look, I can't do it from where I sit, but.
No, that's facts. And I will say, for the audience listening, Sara will help. She's helped me with plenty of different things regarding Frugal Athlete and different things like that. So mad respect. If you do your homework, come with intention and, try to provide value. Don't always ask, try to give and, good things tend to happen when you do that.
Yeah, no, thanks, Amobi. And like I said, I was telling Elle when you had to step away for a second, I was like, man, we're gonna collaborate at some point. Well, I don't know when or where, but I feel like it's gonna happen because you're both doing some really great stuff.
No, and speaking of really great stuff, you're on the board of I Play Like a Girl. Can you talk about that? Like, what's its mission? Like, how did you get involved? I feel like some things fall in your lap, but then some things you're just like a go-getter and like go after it.
Yeah, this was one that fell in my lap. I had met the CEO of Play Like a Girl at this ESPN women's event. And we had just been, she'd been telling me what she's doing, and I just like throwing out some ideas, whatever. But Play Like a Girl, the purpose or the mission to date is to keep middle-aged school. I'm like, no, middle school girl. I'm like stumbling over it. Basically, girls between 9 and 14 to stay in sports, right? Because what we've seen is 50% of girls will drop out of sports by the time they hit high school. And what the research has shown, ESPN and I think it was Ernst & Young had done the study where they surveyed all, I can't remember if it was Fortune 500 C-level executives or women in leadership position in the corporate world to find out like why they were successful. And it turns out like 92% had played sports growing up. And about half, especially those in the C-suite, had played at the collegiate level, right? So you got some like really strong data showing that girls who play sports grow up to be women in these really amazing roles. And so part of the Play Like a Girl curriculum is one, just access, right? Whatever it is, whether it's archery, whether it's soccer, whether it's golf, whatever the sport is, it could be gymnastics, dance, cheer. There are these benefits like leadership and confidence building skills. And so that was kind of the core mission. But then just seeing where women are not represented tend to be in the STEM fields, right? So science, tech, engineering, math. And so layering STEM onto sport and showing how the two can work together for long-term success. So the organization offers camps and clinics. We tend to partner with school districts. Right now, the focus is Nashville, but we have mentoring sessions and we do pop-up clinics around the country. But the goal is to keep these girls engaged, active, and, the confidence levels. I need some of the confidence levels for the girls that are in our program because they, have no fear. They say what's on their mind. I think, whereas it took me, probably 40 years to get here, they're like there in like 12, so thanks for asking. It's a pretty wonderful group. And we'll talk about things like, financial literacy and education, as much as we will about physics, when you hit a ball, and gosh, please don't quiz me on my math right now, my formulas, but like tying all that together, is key.
That sounds dope. Have you guys done any work with Space United?
No, I don't know what that is.
So we've had them on the show a few weeks back. Space United FC, they are a soccer club started by former SpaceX.
Former and current.
Yeah, former and current.
What?
And so they have a program where they work with kids where they kind of integrate soccer with STEM. So I think that could be a pretty good connection there.
That's really cool. I missed that one, but you saw I just wrote that down.
Yeah.
We'll definitely make the connection. And also we'll have more information of I Play Like a Girl in the show notes. So thank you for sharing. I think, like you said, it's important, access and exposure. That's like the big game changer, for these young ladies as they continue to, grow in the space of not only soccer, but other sports and the different C-suite opportunities that are available to them.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, you've done, speaking of C-suite, speaking of opportunity, you are an owner. You're repping the hat right now. Talk about this, because I saw on Twitter, you just randomly was like, "Oh, I'm so happy." I'm like, "Why is she like?" I know she's like lives out there, but how did this happen?
Oh man! So this is something that I was gonna say. You mentioned something about like going to make it happen, whether things fall in your lap, and this was kind of maybe a combination of both. Maybe, yeah, it was a combination of both. But so gosh, I'm like, damn, where do I start? So a couple of years ago, I had a former colleague from this would be a long story. So I'm just like, if you need to jump in, it's a really long story. So a few years ago, a former MLS colleague had announced ownership of the Las Vegas Lights. And I was like, Brett did that? I'm like, maybe I could do that, right? And so I went to go visit him out in Vegas. And just learn more about what that process was. And so my husband and I, we've been together a long time. We make a lot of decisions together, and a lot of that is obviously financial. And so we're trying to figure out like, okay, how much would it cost to buy into a team to become team owners? And so when I heard about Brett, that was the first time I knew anybody personally that had been a team owner. And so that really kind of got the idea going. And so we looked at, what that was like. And we're like, oh, would you be open to, other investors? And they're like, no, I want to keep it in the family. So I was like, all right, no problem. Get it. Right. And so this was like probably 2016. So it's been a minute. And then through that, just, Googling, like, what does it cost? Like, I'm thinking you have to be like billionaires, and Brett is not a billionaire. So I'm thinking, all right, this is like attainable. Right. And so then I had my former boss was CMO for minor league baseball. And I'm like, all right, those are, it's not huge money to be in a franchise. And again, just doing some homework there. And I think he said at the time it was like maybe $2 million to buy into, to buy a minor league baseball team. But I was like, I'm not excited, but you know how I feel about baseball, right? So I was like, I don't want to do that. But then last year, another former colleague announced that she was a co-owner of Angel City. And I was like, oh, like, that's amazing. Like, yes. Like, and I was that's when I really got excited. Like, the other two, conversations was just like interesting, like, let me learn, but like, what's it going to be? And so anyway, so I looked into that, and they weren't open, to like any new, no new friends at that point. So, all right, fine. Then I reached out to the Chicago Red Stars, because the owner of the Red Stars follows me on Twitter, and I'm from Chicago. So I'm like, okay, maybe. And I had just heard somebody else saying they were talking to the owner of the Red Stars about potentially buying in. So I was like, okay, like, that's also not daunting, right? If you're not like a majority owner, you don't have to put up as much capital. And so reached out to him, no response there. Just, I don't even think he ever saw my message. So that was that. And this is the part where it falls into my lap, where the Courage had called me. Somebody in the sponsorship team had called me looking for sponsorship, and we had just talked about, when I respond to somebody or when I don't. And this person, I could tell, had done his homework. And I called him back. I was like, look, I can't sponsor. We're facing a lot of budget cuts. We're over invested in North Carolina, because that's where our biggest offices are, and a lot of businesses. And I said, this could be a conversation we have maybe next year. But good luck, right? Like, I really wish you the best. If there's anything I do, let me know. And so I didn't even think about asking him at this point, because I had been rejected or nobody had responded. I was like, oh, okay, I'm done. And then like 2 days later, I had just randomly come across this news headline in the Raleigh News and Observer. It's like, Steve Malik, owner of the Courage, open to investors. And I was like, oh. So I called up my sponsorship guy and I said, look, it's still a no for me from Wells Fargo, but I personally am interested, in being an investor. And he was like, okay, let me, I'm not in charge of the process. Let me put you in touch with somebody who is. And that's how the conversation got started.
Nice. So
I'll take a breather there.
So this is definitely something I'm interested in. I know Amobi's interested in this as well.
My apologies.
Oh, no, it's all good. We didn't miss you.
I wasn't going to say anything, Amobi, but Amobi dropped off. He's back on now.
All right. So this is something that I know both Amobi and I are very interested in, is like team ownership. And, there's been tons of, lower league teams who have done like crowdfunding campaigns and stuff like that. And we've definitely got into some of those. But this is definitely something I'm personally interested in as well. So like, as much as you can share, I would love to like hear like the steps, ballpark figures, if you can even share that.
Right.
I don't want to pry too much. And like, if there's like any like strategic things that kind of help make your bid a little bit more appealing to an owner.
Yeah. So happy to talk, share what I can. And certainly NDA in the process. So I can't disclose, too much, but I'll share what I think I can share. Okay. So it was interesting. So the first conversation with the Courage, it was great. I appreciate that they took me seriously, right? Because what I didn't mention was, so when I saw the news article saying, Steve Malik open to investors, I called them back. I said, I'm interested. Like, I want to do it, and they said, okay, well, we'll call you back. We'll put you in touch with the right people. And so I went to bed that night, and the next morning, turn on Twitter or go on Twitter, and it's Naomi Osaka, new Courage owner. And I was like, that's it. Like, I've got zero chance. Like, my heart, like, I was excited for her, but my heart sank because I'm thinking, Angel City has all these celebrities.
Right.
That was like, that seemed to be the trend. And I was like, oh no, I can't. Like, I'm just like little Sarah over here. Right. But they called me back. And I said, thank you so much for calling me back. I am sure you've got people out of the woodwork now calling you, trying to buy in. And they said, oh yeah, everybody's calling us to buy in. Right. And so we, it was supposed to be maybe a half-hour conversation, wound up being 90 minutes, not just because I talk a lot, but just a lot. We were vibing, right? It was, I would say something, they would say something. And it was like we were dating. We were both trying to convince each other why we were the right fit for each other. Right.
Yeah.
So that was like the first step, is getting to know each other. And then, out of that conversation, it was, and I will say this just because I know we're, 2 Cents, you guys talk about money and finance here. I know that's, a personal passion for Amobi for sure. And Elle, it sounds like you are too. Then it's like, the question is, okay, great that you're interested. Are you an accredited investor? Right. And so to be an accredited investor, you probably have talked about this on the show or aware, right? There's certain things that you need to check off the box, and you can Google this and say, part of it is, what's your income for the past couple of years as a, either single or as a married couple? What are your net assets, not including your home? And there's one more requirement. I can't remember. There were like 3 things. And so, check. And so, and I will share, right? So some of the background, some of my, kind of financial background is, we both, my husband and I, so we both came in the ownership conversation together, even though I called the Courage without telling him. I just went for it, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So, I started getting into trading, probably when I hit 30, right? So I had a small trading account. It wasn't a lot. I can't remember how much I put in. And it's all relative, right? What's a lot, what's not, right? But I'd say, I think part of it was I was trading, I don't know, maybe it was like $5,000, at the time in like my account. And so I had started to do that way. My husband, now he's a surgeon, but before that he had done investment banking, right? So we'd always talked about like, both growing up from immigrant families, like where he grew up, like he was born in Haiti. And so like, you look at the town where he came from, you're like, man, how'd you get here? I was in a situation where I didn't know I wasn't well off until I got to college. And I was like, so this is what, rich people do and have. Okay, it's different. So a lot of it was just like, how do we grow our own wealth, right? Because neither one of our parents was going to give us money. We didn't have generational wealth, right? Even though our parents worked really hard. So anyway, so that's just to give you like a basis for like how we accumulated like the funds to even do this, right?
Right.
So that was part of it. The second piece was in between my time working at Major League Soccer and today, I left sports and I'd done a bunch of different things, but including working at a venture capital firm. Well, that venture capital firm allowed me to buy stock options, and I exercised those options and the company went public. So that was very helpful to acquire, right? A good pocket of money. And, we were able to like put a deposit on a house, and then luck certainly played a good part where we were able to come in, buy this house at low interest rates. And then we sold the house, and then we made money off of the house. Right. And then, and so then certainly just with our income and savings, we don't buy a ton of stuff. Like we don't have a lot of material things, but we paid off our student loans. And then we're like, once you're in a place to like see growth, right.
Mm-hmm.
Through this thing called interest, right. This is what like, I'm not, what's that, Amobi?
Compound interest.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing. When it works in your favor, it's a beautiful thing. When it works, when it's dead, it's not great. So anyhow, so all these things kind of helped us get to this point, right? So I did want to bring that up here. Now, in terms of like the actual like dollar amount, I cannot disclose that, but it is significant. I will say I had friends that reached out and they're like, hey, I'm interested. And I was like, well, I can't disclose, but like, and they would throw out some money, some figures. And I was like, unless you do a collective, right? Maybe get an LLC and like aggregate those funds and then go in as a group. I said, it's tough. So yeah, it's pretty significant. I don't want to downplay that, but I did want to share like how we got to that point. Cause you just, and I did do what you guys did. I got rejected because they oversubscribed, but Detroit City FC, they had a couple years ago. I don't know if you saw that, you could buy a share. And so I was like, yeah, I want to buy a share. I want to be a team owner. Like this was like 2-3 years ago. But they're like, no, thanks. Take your, $100 and, $130 and take it back because there were too many people that were participating, which is fine. Yeah. So anyhow, all right. So now we've gone through like, the courting conversation, the are you accredited investor conversation, went through the, Sarah, like, how do you and your husband afford this? Right. So that's right. This is like now like a decade.
It's only right though. We had someone from Wells Fargo. You got to give us a little financial history and some context. So thank you so much for that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And so, yeah, so a lot of it, I would say layered, right? The compound interest definitely layered over, many, many years, right? It wasn't necessarily a total windfall, but a lot of it was, and from that, I will say, sorry, we also invested in startups, right? There is a couple options where you can start off investing in small amounts, right? All again, relative, where you go find websites and do that. And we've seen returns from that. So all of this like added up, right, to where we were like able to invest. And then, okay, so the next step, once you say, yeah, check, I have a credit, I've got all these steps done. Now they're like, okay, well, the guy who's in charge of the process says, let me introduce you to the majority owner and then have a conversation that way. And so that's when we start talking. And again, it's still more of like the courting, but that, Elle, to your point, that's when the strategic components come to place, right? Because there's a lot of people out there, at least it feels that way, that have more money than I do, have more money than me and my husband combined by leaps and bounds, but they didn't bring anything to the table beyond the money. And that's, Steve was like, I don't want that. Like he wants somebody who, wasn't doing it for the ego play, although I was kind of doing it for the ego play. He wanted somebody, he definitely wanted women. He wanted people of color. He wanted, whether me being Latina, my husband being Black, like he wanted really diverse perspectives on there. I think the fact that I have a sponsored background certainly helped. The marketing piece certainly helped. And so that's the type of folks that they, and I think Lisa Baird even mentioned it maybe recently in an interview about like, what are you looking for in new investors? And a lot of it was like, what do you bring to the table besides the money piece? And so I felt like we had a pretty compelling case there and they saw that. And, I have to thank them because they took me seriously. Like I said, Naomi Osaka News came out and everybody was calling them. And I was like, I'm not going to get a call back. And they did. And I'm really appreciative of the opportunity because it really is. You don't know what's happening behind closed doors. Like I just happened to know people, who had started at Angel City or, Las Vegas Lights that I can at least, maybe learn a little bit, but you don't know when necessarily, unless they publicly disclose like Steve did, right? You don't know when these opportunities pop up. And that's, and then back to your point, Moby, about the access all around, like, beyond sports, just kind of life and growth and certainly financial, education and literacy. Like, you don't know what you don't know. And, I don't know if you saw the news about Peter Thiel today about how this Joker, I don't like him very much. I'm okay saying that.
I was like, oh,
how this Joker,
I didn't see it.
He manipulated the Roth IRA vehicle to accumulate, millions and millions, if not billions, right? Like the Roth IRAs, like you're capped at what you can contribute, but somehow he was able to finagle and work the system. And just like that article that came out, I think it was it ProPublica last week, about how all these billionaires have avoided paying.
Yeah, I read that one.
So it's just another extension of like, people have worked the system. Yeah, it may not be illegal, but you're just like, wait a second, like this is not. And but the thing is, they've got access to attorneys and accountants who know how to work these systems. And man, I went off on a tangent, but it's just not, I guess goes back to the point of access. Like, you just don't know what you don't know. And it's really frustrating. And so again, I'm like, as much as I can share, I want to be able to do that, because I would love to see more of this. And I think from this experience, I'm thinking, man, own what you can, right? Like, and so what you're doing with 2Cents, or what you're doing with Frugal Athlete, like it's a grind, it's hard, right? And you're just like, oh, yeah, that is definitely. And my husband's always been entrepreneurial. My dad owned a business growing up, like a mom and pop, store. And I just saw how much he worked, and I was like, I don't want to work that hard. Like that was always my thing. I was like, I don't want to work that hard, but I get it now. I totally get it now.
Yeah. And kind of going back to the strategic piece, your husband's an orthopedic surgeon. So like that's
yes,
feet, legs, like that's
if that's it. He's office. Like if you ever need a second opinion, he's here for it. And we know they've got their team doc, but that's certainly we think an asset in the space.
For sure. Yeah, I'm all about finding strategic angles to kind of get in there, get in the door, especially if you don't have all of the, financial assets that may be required, but you can bring some other value to the table.
Yeah. And like, and even, no, you're right. And I think even in which I saw, I certainly value the people, in my orbit, but to be able to make some connections and hopefully, some of the startups that we've worked with can potentially become sponsors down the road, right? Once they see some success, that would be like a dream for me, is to be like, oh, this is something we invested in here. They've grown and now they can be, a team sponsor. Like that would be amazing. So knock on wood with that one.
That'd be amazing. So with that being said, now you're part of the NWSL family. Say you are Lisa Bair for a second. What are you doing from a marketing standpoint? Your commissioner. How are you growing the game?
I feel like she's already done so much. How are you growing? Oh gosh.
Yeah, let's give her credit. She has done a lot. She's done some great stuff.
She has. She really has. I think about. I don't know if this is quite the answer, but like I've been thinking about, especially the Courage, right? It's a small market team compared to LA, Chicago, New York, right? Mm-hmm. And I just think about, and this is maybe not an answer, but I think about just the awareness and exposure level. And I think finding ways to be able to tell the stories of the teams, of the athletes, of the fans is huge. And it seems like so basic, but I think we got people becoming millionaires because they were on some reality TV show and they really had nothing to offer, in my opinion. Right? Like, I mean, don't get me wrong. Some people are certainly talented, right? You got your talent shows, but then you've got some random shows out there and you're just like, oh, wow. They're now famous. They're now commanding, millions, and people know them everywhere and they're listening to them on Instagram. And I'm thinking, why can't, I would love to just see more just general marketing and support from every aspect of the game, especially the media side of things. I think that's really important. And so it's really great to, it's a streaming service, but it's been great that, CBS signed on and, CBS has like completely gone like all in on soccer, but it's really great to have like one space or place where people can go to and find the games. I think that's huge, right? And even MLS was facing this years ago when you didn't know when or where to watch an MLS game. I think having some consistent broadcasting is key. So I think that's certainly it. I think broadcasting is certainly a piece of it, but then also being able to have every aspect, like the reason why sponsors, besides the revenue piece, part of it is to leverage their channels, right? So I know MLS gets excited whenever we've got MLS content on our ATM screens or in our TV screens and branches, right? A lot of that is awareness. Like, oh, wow, you see him on TV. And it's like, something about seeing somebody on TV makes them like compelling.
It all adds up.
It's so simple. It's so simple. Like, I'll tell you guys, I don't say this a lot, even though it's like public. So James and I were on HGTV a couple years ago, and we were on House Hunters. And I was like, I will say it was a strategic move on his part to grow his practice because we had just moved to town in Florida. Mm. But the number of people who've been like, oh, we've seen it on HGTV, and they're like really excited about it. It's a thing. And I'm just like, oh God, some days I wish we had never done that, but in other ways. So I would love to see like the courage, get on HGTV, right? It's just little things like that people pay attention to and like, they love it. Just, I don't know how to explain that phenomenon, and just being on TV makes you like an instant hit.
So are you also thinking content beyond just game days? So
yeah, that's a very
content around teams, stuff like that.
You broke it down much more succinctly than I did, but yeah, that'd be it. Just be part of like, and I think everybody's got a great story to tell. Everybody does. So I don't want to minimize anybody who's gone on, reality TV and done, dating competitions or anything like that. But yes, it's something that gets people really interested, right? Because there's not a whole lot of time to, it's 45 minutes solid, 15 minute, and then it's kind of it. No, in the women's game, I shouldn't say no, it's getting better. I feel like last year there was a turning point. I felt like there was like momentum behind NWSL. I felt like there was momentum behind WNBA, and then COVID hit, and it was like, oh no, what's going to happen? And it actually wound up, I think, helping, because those were the two leagues that came back first in terms of TV. So I think that exposure was really beneficial. And then even when the other sports came back, the other dominant sports came back, those ratings for the most part retained, which has been really great to see for both WNBA and WSL.
For sure. Yeah, we'll talk offline.
Like you bring up a great point. Me and Elle talk about it all the time. Like if we could see like the All or Nothings, the Hard Knocks, those type of shows, or like those behind the scene actions, especially in the women's game, because I mean we've said it. The NWSL women, they know how to brand, they know how to market. Like if you go to their Instagram pages, they do a great job. So if we could see more of that, that would be great. And I don't want to backtrack, but you talked about startups and stuff like that. So do you have like a philosophy as it pertains to, what you guys invest in, whether it's in the sports space or outside the sport?
Yeah. I would say, so when we first started, it was stuff that we knew mostly in the medical space, right? Because we had access, right? Who's looking for money? How do you even go about investing in a company? So it started off in the medical device space just because that was what we had access to, right? And so Jane, and my husband, I trust his business sense. Like he's like one of the smartest guys I know. And so when he was like, oh, what do you, and it was neat. It was really endearing that he's like, oh, we've got this company. Like, what do you think? And I'm like, I don't know, you're the surgeon. What do you think? Right. But we would talk it through. And so anyway, it started off in the medical space. And then it went to, there's a couple sites. One is called, I don't know if you've heard of it. One is called, I think, Funders Club. And the other one's called Micro Ventures, where you as an individual person, again, assuming you hit these minimum like requirements, you can invest like, modest amounts, again, relatively speaking. And so it was things like Robinhood, Pinterest, trying to think what else. I think 23andMe, other stuff that popped up. And there's certainly been, companies that have like gone bust and, we've lost money. And then now I made this year, aside from the courage, I put it, somebody had posted, oh, where are the women investors, right? Because we know the big ones, we know women, are kind of overlooked, especially, if they're founders, but from an investor standpoint, like who's reaching out to the women. And so I posted on Twitter, like, okay, I'm looking at, women-focused companies, consumer products, $10,000, in terms of, the check. I can't remember what else I was saying. Everybody says like novel or unique or different, right? But just something like I felt like was compelling. And part of it is like, you don't know it until you see it, which is not really helpful to founders, right? Like,
yeah.
So when I posted that, I had maybe 15 people pitch me their company, and there was, out of the 15, I think 5 were pretty good, but I only landed on 1, only because I can't afford to write checks for everybody, right? So there is a limit, right? And so there was some really great thing, and what was great, I saw black 1, 2, 3. There's probably 3 or 4 Black women founders. There's a couple folks in the music space. There's a lot of people in the skincare and fashion space. And so like, those are areas I felt like I don't really know. And I feel like there's a lot of competition. So how do you break through? That's also the hardest, like, it's like, what stands out to me? Cause I shared with everyone that pitched to me, I'm like, hey, this is why I'm not going to move forward. And part of it is my own ignorance, you know? And I said, look, I don't know the space enough to feel comfortable. You may have a compelling product, like try, these may be other people you want to talk to or other areas you may want to look at. And again, I'm not the expert in the space. So, you know, hopefully no hard feelings, right? I ultimately picked, and I'm not an expert in the space either, but I picked this company called Purpose Tea, Vietnamese woman, immigrant. There's something just about the way she was really passionate about her work. And not to say that other people weren't, but her thing was, it's a social enterprise focused on helping the women that pick tea, this purple tea in Kenya, be able to raise enough money to buy their own land so they can continue, right? So it wasn't just like higher wages. It was like high enough wages to buy your own so that you can grow, right? And then the product was just good. So and that's another thing. Before I went and I wanted to see what it was like. So I ordered my own teas off of Amazon, off their website. I wanted to see what that process was like from a customer perspective.
Due diligence, people.
What's that?
Say due diligence.
Yes, that's right. Due diligence. She had already, the product was already in like Whole Foods in Texas. So the revenue is already coming in. That's the other thing, right? Like there's some people who are going to bet really big, even when you have zero income. I'm not there yet, right? Like I need to see something's coming in, right? Besides just like my own personal, like, because I could probably be like suckered into anything, right? But that's where I'm like, due diligence will help ground me. Sorry, I told you I can go really long. And then, but once I tasted the product on top of everything else I heard, I'm like, that's it. This tastes really good. And I don't even love iced tea, but I love the taste of this iced tea, right? And there's iced tea everywhere, but I love the social enterprise aspect. I love that she was immigrant, that she was Asian, that she had been really thoughtful. And then I looked at who she had on board, and she had found somebody who, one of her picks to help her grow the company was this guy he used to work at PepsiCo leading growth brands at Pepsi, right? So his job was to acquire new brands and identify new categories within the beverage space. And so I was like, she found the right person to help her. You know, she knows what she knows, but she knows like what she doesn't know, and she got to find somebody to fill that plug. Anyway, so as of this month, they are now in, I think, 1,500 Kroger stores around the country. So that was like really exciting. So
that's a great time.
Yeah, so it's called Purpose Tea, and Kroger's, it's like Albertsons, whatever the family of Kroger stores are. So you're in Austin. You may be able to, like, Texas was like the first.
I'm gonna check it out.
Yeah,
I'm a tea drinker now.
Are you? Yes.
Help me stay patient. Well, we'll see. I'm trying to go all in on some of these personal projects. 2Cents Sports, Frugal Athlete, but I'm always looking.
I know you said. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say she's still looking for investors if anybody's interested. But
okay.
we can chat about that.
We'll definitely chat offline.
Yeah, let's chat about that. What
about like if there's like one sports startup? Obviously, you invested in the Courage, but like one sports startup. I know you retweet Together X a lot. There's Re-Inc. Is there like one sports startup that you're like, if I had the chance or I'm looking to get into?
Damn, man, I'm not prepared.
On the tip of her tongue.
I'm not prepared for that question. You know what? I think Together is a good one. I think Together is a good one. Not just because of the founders, but I think the industry is now ready to start elevating women's voices in sports. So I think that's one I would definitely like. I think they're probably going to get acquired in like a couple of years. So from a investment, from a investment standpoint, that's probably it. I'll try and think of some other ones, but that's, it's kind of what I'm eyeing kind of now. And that's a hard thing too, is like, there's so many sports startups and a lot of them are trying to do the same thing. It's like, how as a founder, how do you break through all that? That's hard. That's a really tough position to break into. And, and there was some of the startups I had looked at that I thought were really, they fill a void, but they just hadn't had the revenue yet. And I said, look, it's too early for me. Like, I will probably regret not investing in them, but that's kind of where I'm at right now. Like, you just have to be okay not investing.
Yeah, for sure.
Or moving forward. Like, so you guys, like, I'm again really impressed by like everything you've done and you created. My husband and I, when we were in college, I'll tell you this really quick story. We're like, okay, we're gonna start a website. And the website is gonna be connecting college students with apartments and finding roommates, right? So it was called rumors.com, ROOMERS, rumors.com. And we got so caught up on the stupid name and logo that we never launched it. And, we could have been billionaires by now.
We got stories for that. Yeah, I love that story.
Yeah.
I love
we
that
talked
story.
about it to this
I'm
day.
actually surprised. I'm surprised you didn't say just women's sports. Yeah, I know, because they just raised around with what they're doing. There's so many good companies. So like you said, it's so hard. You got to just do due diligence. You got to do your homework, and you got to find what fits into your investment strategy.
Yeah, there's a lot, and I can't say I know enough of them. Was it Allison Felix just announced she's coming up with a shoe line?
Yeah, she just announced that like earlier today, I believe.
There's a lot of good stuff out there. There's a lot of good stuff. I'm just like, I'm sure I haven't even heard of that. If I heard, would be there. But I would say, and here's the thing, right? Some of the stuff is like self-fulfilling too, right? Meaning the advantage that a lot of athletes have is a name recognition, and investors are going to align with that, and they'll go with that. And I feel bad for anybody who's like trying to break through without the name recognition. Another one. Well, yeah. It was too late. I didn't know how to break in, but Tonal and Peloton, like we had gotten, we had bought those.
Don't. I'm gonna have PTSD about Tonal. I was there when they were in stealth mode. I went to Tonal's workspace. Every time Tonal gets brought up, I'm sick to my stomach.
I'm sorry, man. I know.
It's all good.
You had. Moby, I'm hurting for you.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was tough, but. Like when you think about investing, you have to have hindsight, because it's just, yeah.
Is it, no matter what, there's gonna be wins, there's gonna be losses.
Exactly.
And the other thing I didn't mention was like, it's hard. The bank, like I work for a bank, right? And it's like not anybody's favorite like industry. And like looking at investments, like I'm looking, and I'm like, I want to invest in companies that are have decent, good reputation, and like nothing. There's nobody that's unproblematic. There's no corporation that's unproblematic. As much as like we want to find them, but part of it is like, why can't there be, and yeah. Anyway.
So before we shift gears, I want to ask one last question because you're probably one of the go-to women in the sports industry space. A lot of people look up to you.
Oh gosh.
So what advice would you have for someone, a young lady trying to break into the space or get into the space? And then what's one way we as, everyone to make it more inclusive for women in the sports business space? Yeah.
No, thanks, Amobi. Thanks for that question. Like I talked about the Play Like a Girl participants and how freaking bold and courageous they are. Like not to say I was a mouse, like a quiet mouse growing up, but I didn't challenge a whole lot. Is not, it was not culturally, it's not something, I was encouraged to do. And it's, I think through age, become a little more bold. And certainly, when you are in a financial position to kind of be like, F it, I'm gonna say what I'm gonna say and I don't care. Like that's also helpful. So I guess what would I say? My advice is like always really simple. It's like, just be honest, go for what you want. It's nothing really earth shattering. At all. I will say in terms of like how men can be allies. I think part of it, and I think, I'm looking at you two, right, as Black men, like I think people historically have counted, right, you out, and like, okay, they see you as an athlete. Sure. Obvious. Makes sense. Right. All the stereotypes that are there, but as founders of companies, as businesses, especially in the financial space. And I think part of it is like, don't just judge books by their cover, which sounds really simple, but the number of people that have like looked over my head to see who else was behind me, to see who was more important, to see who looked like them. all the time, and part of the ownership of the courage is like, yeah, you thought you knew me, but you didn't know me. Like, you didn't know what I was capable of. You just saw, here's a short little Latina, like, is she the one that's going to organize my travel or get my coffee cup? Because there's been times where I had to be like, nah, that's not my job. And it's really uncomfortable to say that and challenge people. But I think part of it is like, I think, and I don't know if it's American culture or what, but there is this nature to look for who looks important, who has a bigger title, thinking they are going to be the person that does something for you or has the power. And, maybe, most times, maybe they will, right? But yeah, you didn't know this like happy-go-lucky girl was going to do this, did you? Right. And so I think part of it is like, don't underestimate who you're talking to just because you have your own biases, because they will surprise you.
No, that's great advice. I know I've seen some people lose deals just because of the way they treated someone they expected, to be in a certain position and not knowing, like, you're talking to the CEO, right? Or, you're talking to like the majority investor of like, and not to say like just because they aren't that person, you should treat them with disrespect,
right?
But
right.
Like, respect everyone and know everyone has importance and value to whatever organization they're working with, so it's really appreciate you sharing that. And I think it's really important that you share that.
Yeah, no, thank you. I totally subscribe to that. And, but there's a lot of egos in sports industry. This, there's a lot of egos.
We can have another podcast about that one.
We can, please. There's a lot. There's a lot of that. And I think, I would love to have more confidence, but not to the point where I'm like dismissing folks. That's a recipe for, looking like a clown, I think. But
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So it feels pretty good to be in these shoes today. I will say that.
Nah, that's respect. I can't wait to see more. Elle, what you got? I think we got the no card, yellow card, red card. We don't.
I got one question before we jump into that.
This is probably the most important question.
Yeah. So if you listen to previous shows, we have this pizza debate, right? If it's somebody from New York, if it's somebody from Chicago, or somebody from Detroit, we always ask, what's the best pizza? And you being from Chicago and having spent time in New York, I'm sure you've probably experienced both. So what is the best pizza to you? Which
it's still going to be Chicago. And so I told you I was kind of a nerd. I actually took a lecture on like the history of Chicago style pizza. And one of the original, and it doesn't necessarily have to be deep dish either. I still go for Chicago pizza, but one of the originals was 4 blocks from my apartment growing up. So I lean to Chicago. I'm definitely personally biased, but after taking that course, and the guy has a whole podcast on like pizza, but it was a course through the University of Chicago Alumni Association. So I mean, you're talking like scholarly.
Intense.
Dope.
Chicago pizza. Although I just tried Detroit for the first time last year and it's quite good.
So what's your favorite Chicago pizza spot?
Oh, like location?
Yeah, like restaurant. Yeah.
Okay, for thin crust, it's Home Run Pizza, Home Run Inn, which is, like I said, in my neighborhood. But they also are in your local freezer section. And it's not bad for frozen pizza. And even this gentleman with this pizza podcast, whose name is escaping me, said that was the best frozen pizza too. So we're aligned there. Deep dish, I like Giordano's, which is, is now a big chain, but that's like home to me. Yeah, when I eat Giordano's pizza.
Yeah, Giordano's is my favorite.
Okay, respect.
I think a deep dish. Yeah.
That's a good question. I was waiting for this question.
All right, so let's jump into one of our favorite segments of the show. I'm trying to get my timestamps together here. No card, yellow card, red card. So this is a rapid fire segment of the show where I'll read off some news topics. It could be news about sports, soccer, pop culture, whatever. But we'll be rating or giving our opinions on those topics using the soccer card system. So no card is I agree with it or I'm cool with it. Yellow card is I can go either way. And red card is obviously I disagree or I'm not cool with it. And we'll kind of give an explanation of why we gave each card. So this first one is going to be a little bit more interactive than they have in the previous shows. You being from Chicago, the Chicago Fire have unveiled their rebrand last week. And there are some mixed reviews, mostly from White Sox fans. But overall, it's pretty positive reception. So gonna pull this up.
Yes.
And we're gonna what are we giving this rebranded crest? What card are we giving it?
Yeah, I like it. I like it. So it's no card. It is definitely better than the last one. And I actually do think it was time for a rebrand given the original crest. It was just way too much confusion between like the Chicago Fire and like the real Chicago Fire PD department and the TV show. So I did not like I didn't hate the one before this, but it was not great. I'm down with this. I like it.
Amobi, what you think? What card you give it?
I'm going no card for the simple fact that they weren't stubborn in their ways and they decided to change after, some fans response and stuff like that. I know they're moving back, new ownership. He wants to do a little bit differently, trying to get Chicago back to its history. I can see why White Sox fans are a little bit upset, but it was much needed. It was much needed.
Yeah, it's definitely giving Cubs vibes with that C. But overall,
Yes,
I think it's an improvement from the previous rebrand. So
we're aligned.
Yeah, definitely did better there.
Yeah, I felt bad. One of my friends works at the Chicago Fire, and I, if I'm gonna put it on Twitter, I'm gonna say it to your face too, and usually vice versa. And so I had critiqued the last logo, and he's like, "Wow, I didn't expect you to say that." I think he was disappointed I was publicly against it.
Oh, that's bad.
I said I wasn't against it. I said a rebrand was necessary. I don't think this hit the mark, is what I said. Something like that. Anyway, okay.
Yep. All right, so next one, and this is the last one. So the U.S. Women's National Team Olympic roster was released this week, and it's a lot of the same faces, including some that have been injured for the past few months, taking some spots from some of the new national team standouts. So, what card are we giving Black Coast team selection for the Olympics? Sarah,
I'm hovering between yellow and red.
Okay.
In some ways, I get if it's not broke, don't fix it. In other ways, I'm like, there's some really, really like, just hot shots that are just ready to like thrive. And I think, and I'm specifically thinking about, like the midget,
Yeah.
Who else am I thinking about? And maybe still too young. I mean, there's some people who are like really, really young, but who I think have a lot of potential. And, the ones I'm thinking about are the Black women, right? And, Crystal Dunn last year or a couple years has been saying, hey, we want to change some of the faces that we see in U.S. soccer. And I think she's got a good point, especially when there's so much talent. So I get the, if it's not broke, don't fix it, right? Because something like 17 out of the 18 were all on the previous roster. Or we're on the World Cup roster?
There's a couple of new ones,
okay,
but they're not Black women. I think Adriana French is probably a new face that is a Black woman.
Face. Yeah. So
other than that, yeah. So
I'm in between. I'm just like, yeah. But they get a card.
All right. So if you had to give one definitively, which card would you give?
Oh, this is hard. Okay, can I give 2 cards?
Sure. The orange card, the fake red and yellow.
Yeah, because I'm coming like from a marketing side, red card. You should have brought some new faces, get some energy, get some excitement. From a sporting, and this is where I'm not a soccer player, and maybe I'll lean more red from a marketing hat. As from a sporting director hat, which I'm not an expert in, who's the best player, who are the best players. Yellow card. But all right, I'm a marketer, so red card, done.
All right, red card it is.
I'm probably gonna get fined for this. I don't know.
Yeah. So I'm gonna start off by saying, like, it's tough. There's only so many spots on the roster for the coach to pick, but I'm giving it a red card because I've been saying this for the longest time. Like, for the women's national team, there should be a cap on how many caps you can get. It's like I feel like there should no be excuses where they have 200 plus caps, 250 plus caps when you have young talent biding their time, and they're not even getting chances to showcase themselves. Not to say that if they're not taking your spot, then go right ahead and keep playing. But they're not even getting the opportunity to showcase that like they're worthy of getting into the team. And it's almost like you got to like pass the gates of hell just to get a first cap. So for me, I'm giving it a red card. And it's not like it's not like a lack of talent. Like if these new players come in, they're gonna lose. And I feel like you need to develop this new talent, new day and age. So for me, it's a red card. No disrespect to the coach's decisions, no disrespect to the players that made the squad, but like Sara said, we need to see new life.
Yeah, and I think that's something that I think has been kind of glaring. If you look at the men's team versus the women's team, of course, the women's team is much more decorated, but like look at the average age of the people on the players on the team. Like the men's team's trending younger. The women's team, they do trend younger for some of the international games, but for the majority of the starters are, late 20s, early 30s, mid 30s, so they're kind of like on the tail end of their career, and they keep getting selected over some of the new talent who has had the opportunity to play on a national level and play well, and I think also thinking about the Olympics and like some of like the men's teams are usually like U23s, right? When it comes to the Olympics.
Yeah, U23s and then 3 overage players.
Yeah, but the women's teams are like mainly the professionals, like all the pros and like the top tier team. So I would like to see more of a balance there, but definitely like I'm a huge U.S. women's national team supporter, so don't think of this as a slight or anything, but we want to see some of the young talent get in there and eat too. All right, that's my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, I feel like for the people that are watching, obviously you got the big stars that people are going to support, but you do want to see young talent like that are like close in age or close in like touching distance where like, okay, I want to be like her in 4 years, not like someone towards the end of their career.
Yeah.
I almost look at it like stat padding a little bit. Like, all right, we got all these champions on our team. Let's get another one real quick before they retire. Let's get as many as we can before Megan, Carly, and all them retire. So I kind of look at it like that, like they're almost like they're stat padding. So this may be the last Olympics for them. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, it's like imagine if the Dream Team played every Olympics. Like I feel like you've done your job. Yeah. Let's get some new blood in there.
Yeah,
sure.
I agree. It's exciting. I'm glad to see. Obviously, I'm biased. Some courage, folks. And I don't know if you saw the match yesterday where Lynn Williams scored twice after being named an alternate in the morning, and I was like, it was nice to see that, and maybe get some. But yeah, it's a stack. It's whatever. As a country, really solid, which is great, right? It's something to be thankful for sure. Yeah. All right. So we're aligned on this one.
Yeah.
No, that's perfect.
I was kind of having it because I don't want to cut. Like I'm no expert in the game, right? So I appreciate Amobi's perspective too, especially as a player.
No, so with that being said, I mean, that's it for the show. Sara, thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you so much for your patience. And, Elle, shout out to you too, because I was all over the place here. But how can people connect with you if they want to connect with you? How can they support the team and some of the organizations that you're working with?
Yes. Oh, so I say connect Twitter? Actually, I mean, Amobi, is that do we meet on Twitter?
I feel like we met on Twitter, but then like immediately right when we met at like a conference or something, or someone connected us. It was like something like just like back to back.
Yes. Well, I bring up Twitter just because that's that's like my go-to. Just because I thought people are so smart on Twitter, and I learned so much from folks on Twitter. As much as it can be a cesspool, like I've done business, like I was telling you about the company, the media company I work with in Mexican soccer. I found them on Twitter. I've made friendships through Twitter, etc. So Twitter is, I think, a good spot. Yes, Carolina Courage, a humble team. We could use some fans, Doesn't matter how many championships we won. We could still grow, right? Appreciate that. What else was there? There was something else that you mentioned, Amobi. Gosh. Yeah, watch the games, I think another thing is like, I think the more people talk about these things, the more it becomes like a thing, right? A cool thing, a fun thing, something to support. So I'd say awareness is, I would say definitely awareness for women's sports seems to be the big piece. And I think 2021 feels like a breakout year for sure. And NWSL just won breakout league, I think, for Sports Business Journal. Can't remember what else. I think I'll wrap up there. Oh no, the last thing I was going to say, my husband was so excited when I told him, because he was listening to this podcast. We were driving back a couple weeks ago from I can't remember where we were. And he's like, oh, 2 cents. He's like, they call me 2 cents, growing up because Toussents. Some people couldn't.
Oh, yeah.
If you say it, and it's like 2
Shout out to your
cents
husband.
in French. Yeah. So he's like, send my best to them. So he thought that was a cool little alignment. What's that?
What's his name?
Oh, James 2 cents.
Yo, shout out to James.
I'll let him know.
I definitely want to know how he went from investment banking to surgeon. I think that's great. So yeah, shout out to James.
He loves what you guys are doing. Loves it.
Appreciate you, James.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And we're going to have all your information in the show notes. Make sure you guys tap in, subscribe, rate, and review. It helps us get discovered. Follow us on the socials at 2Cents FC. Check out our merch at 2centsports.shop. It helps support the show. Neither L or I are rocking it right now, but make sure you check it out at 2centsports.shop. And tweet us your comments on the show, any topics you want me or L to discuss. Like I said before, rain or shine, we have to get it done. The show must go on. Thank you for your patience. Every Friday, Unfiltered Thoughts and Opinions. Sarah, she not only gave us background into her career, gave us some practical, cool advice, financial advice. So, I'm loving that. And also, as we always talk about soccer. So with that being said, make sure you guys tune in, subscribe. Make sure you subscribe, especially to the YouTube. Sorry, I'm going on a rant, but we're close to 200. Please subscribe, share with a friend, and go from there.
Yep.
That's all I got.
Till next week, y'all. Peace out.
Thank you.